All of us need some law advice every now and then, and we have some of it for you today. Joining me now is attorney Gary Bruce. Thank you so much for being with us.
Hello, nice to be here again.
Yes, awesome. You know, what a mind you have. He just reminded me that we've been on the air for a month. We started February 3rd and March 3rd. Thank you for helping us remember.
Congratulations.
And thank you for your participation.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
I'm going to jump in with the first question. You know, there was that big Supreme Court ruling yesterday in the Westboro Baptist Church case. What are your thoughts legally about that case?
Well, I think we're all troubled by the impact of it and what it says maybe to how people behave. But you know, I'm upset about it or it troubles me for a reason maybe not that wouldn't be obvious, and that is that it seems to take away a person's right to be heard in front of a jury. Yeah, I don't have a problem with the Supreme Court
Explain to them a little bit about some people who may not have been keeping up with the news. Tell them what it is, yeah.
Well, this is the case where a man who lost his son in Afghanistan or Iraq laid him to rest, and while they were having the funeral, a church in the area protested about the behavior of Americans in our society and how this is his death was the result of some retribution from God. And so he actually sued the church. And so it made its way to the Supreme Court, which is kind of unusual for that kind of case to make it there. But at any rate, I understand the courts wanting to protect free speech, and that's essentially what the news is saying about it. We have to protect free speech. These people have a right to speech and a right to debate, and that is something we have to protect. And I think if the government had imposed some kind of limitation on what they could say, or the city
have to see both sides of it.
That's right.
Yes, a lot of people may have seen some of that on the news. They felt that what's happening in the war and homosexuality, those things, they say are going to bring retribution from God. And here the family is in all the grief of the death of a child, and they're doing that sort of protesting, and it's protected by law. Well,
I think bad facts, which these are horrible facts, and the Supreme Court acknowledged that and said, this is horrible, we don't condone what they did. However, we have to protect the constitutional right to free speech. So that part I understand and I applaud. The part that worries me is they said, sir, we don't want you to put that case in front of a jury for damages. And I don't know that they should be going that far, because that's a man's, was he harmed by it? Well, that's for a jury to decide. I don't know how that would come out. But having said that, I don't know that it was for the Supreme Court to take that right away. We have two rights. Right to a civil jury trial, right to be heard by our neighbors in our community to decide issues, and then a right for free speech. And so it had to balance those two. I'm afraid that we lost a little on the right to a jury trial, but certainly where do you draw the line once you start taking away free speech?
Okay. And what about Auburn? We have that case in Auburn, the Auburn Oak Poisoner case. Harvey Updike arrested. As that's proceeding, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, so like any fan, any person, who loves trees. I'm a tree hugger. It disappoints me that a man would be that disturbed to, I guess he did it. He's apparently admitted to it on a radio show.
That's what they say.
I think, we'll see how it works out in the courts. You wonder what his defenses will be. Certainly it would take, you're a little worried about somebody who would do that to him.
And speaking of his defenses, his attorneys, several of them, 2 or 3, have recused themselves from that case. What does that mean? Why does an attorney have an opportunity to do that?
Well, I don't know that they do, but I think the judge probably recognizes the emotional ties some people in Auburn or that community
might have. That's why I wondered, yes, if you're too close to Auburn and then you have to defend someone.
And I think it's probably that they were appointed. And lawyers, young lawyers particularly, but lawyers of all ages get appointed to criminal cases in a situation where there's a crime that's been someone's been accused of, to represent them when the accused doesn't have the money for a lawyer. So, if it's too uncomfortable, if you can't sell what you don't buy, So at some point, if it's so ingrained that you're so upset, maybe it was right to get out of it. I don't know the facts of that. What I do want to say is, though, that one man, I think, did come forward and say, look, I'll take the case. And I applaud that. That's what we're trained to do as professionals.
No matter how you feel about it, he deserves a fair trial. Someone's got to do it. You know?
Well, he deserves, not only deserves, but is entitled to, and ought to, for the protection of all of us. We can't just decide things without a trial. Again, going back to this, trying things in front of our jury, of our peers and community.
The Charlie Sheen case. We had a question to ask you about Charlie Sheen. He's been in the news, that celebrity kind of wacky kind of guy. Do you think he has a case? He is suing the network, saying, you got rid of me. I may be a nut, but I showed up for work on time. So, does he have a case? Well,
you know, I don't know. I'm certain there are all kinds of clauses for both sides in a celebrity situation like that. They would have a huge employment agreement, you know, and I think it's been alluded to. The lesson I see with Mr. Sheen is, of course, he's in a different stratosphere than most of us.
Yes.
He can get away with things that maybe we couldn't. All of Hollywood seems to be that way, but he's trying. It seems to me either he's got the most savvy lawyer who ever lived, or he's really needs a lawyer to maybe tell his story for him. You know, and that's what we do. We tell stories. We tell your side. We tell his side. And I think he needs somebody to maybe tone him down. I'm sure at some point, with all this videotape and all these interviews he's done, at some point, if it does go to a jury trial or a trial of any kind, he's going to regret some of these
Can and will be
statements.
used against him.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
So you know, what an interesting case to see.
Okay. Now, when should the average person call an attorney to speak on their behalf? At what point do you know, I need some help? Well,
you know, every case is different. Mr. Sheen, I think, should have called before he got on the TV with all these interviews. What I see, I do personal injury cases and car wrecks and such, and you know, before you give a statement that you may regret later. Not that you might say anything wrong, not that you would misrepresent or worry about telling the truth. Well, all we want to do is tell the truth, but the people on the other side of the interview, or the other end of the phone sometimes, are the professionals. We give an interview once. We deal with this situation once as an individual involved. And so, you know, in that situation, I encourage my clients.
To call you and say, Gary, do I need an attorney? This is what happened.
That's what we do all day long.
Okay, you may say yes or no.
As opposed to the criminal situation where a judge says, lawyer, I need you to represent this man. And 99% of the time, that lawyer takes on that challenge and does it. In a civil case, we don't take every case, you know. And there's some advice and giving back and forth throughout the process. And if you don't need a lawyer, I tell people all the time, I don't want the cure to be worse than the disease. You know, sometimes we can make it worse, and I truly believe that. Most of the time, I don't think so, but that's part of the advising process. So, responsible lawyers are willing to give advice in those situations every day, and that's what we do. Okay, and how can people get in touch with you? Well, I'm here in Columbus, downtown, and my number's, I guess, all over town, but anyway.
Oh, yeah. Love the billboard.
But 576-GARY is the one on the ads. Our number we've had for 20 years is 596-1446.
Awesome, awesome. Always a pleasure to have you.
Well, thank you very much. Enjoyed it.
Looking forward to you coming back. Thanks so much. Coming up next on the Dee Armstrong Show, we have music from Garrett Miles of Frogtown Hollow, and we're talking with celebrity chef Curtis Stone from the reality show America's Next Great Restaurant. This and more next.